So how about before the message, we're going to say a prayer. And after the prayer, we're going to read this New Year's letter message by Casimiro Cunha. And I'm going to post it here for the friends who are on the internet so they can read it too. And this will be published in the upcoming issue of the Spiritist magazine in the first trimester of the year as well, for people's reference, okay? You know, remember, the prayer is a moment for us to talk with God. And we don't have to close our eyes to talk to God. But why do we close our eyes, right? Because sometimes we say to our children, close your eyes. They don't. And we're like, how do we explain the reason why we close our eyes? Because we're more focused, because if we keep it open, we're distracted looking at the clock, at the lamps, at the camera, the floor, the people, the shoes. And then we start thinking about stuff. So we close it and we really, really focus to make sure that we can connect on our end, because God is always connected with us. It's just a matter. So it's an option. If we close our eyes, it's going to be easier. We have to try and feel it, okay? We're allowed to experiment, opening and closing, to see if we are not sure yet, okay? All right? In this sacred hour, where we recall the sacred birth of our Master Jesus through the most beloved Mother of all, Mother Mary. We can feel you, dear God, for preparing us on earth to receive teachings that are unforgettable. Unforgettable in so many ways, because since Jesus, we have hospitals taking care of the sick. We have professionals who dedicate their lives to reaching out to those who are less privileged or who are troubled or extremely in need. What a blessing. All of it begun with you. 2019 years have gone by. And our planet has already entered a new decade, at least part of it. We're rotating, and around you and a group of your messengers, completing another cycle. What a blessing to be able to be here on earth, incarnated in such an important moment for all, when we are allowed to ostensibly co-create a beautiful world, especially one inside us, where joy is always present, hope never dies, and courage stronger than ever. We can almost feel the beauty that is to be manifested in the new decade, one of transformation, from a cocoon, the cocoon of our ego, transforming it to wings of wisdom and love. May this meeting be beneficial to all present in two realms, and especially to the United States of America in its critical moment. May everyone who is connected to our hearts receive these nourishments that are now being poured onto us. And may these exchange amongst ourselves in two worlds be so deeply nourishing and strengthening, deeply empowering for the new beginning. With your permission, we begin this prayerful meeting for the new year. And so be it. It's okay. Let it out. Let it out. Let it out. Drink some water, Paula. That's okay. They're pouring nourishment.
Oh my goodness.
Believe it. That's okay. Let it out. Right? Everybody's gonna read together. Shall we?
I already read it.
Oh,
In my house.
okay. But now we're gonna read together, okay? We're gonna do clockwise motion. And each one of us, it's gonna be tricky because each one of us gonna read just a single verse, meaning a line. Like one, it's not even a complete thought, okay? So we're gonna complete it. Not even a sentence. Mamma mia. Casimiro Cunha. Casimiro Cunha has so many beautiful books. We were able to translate through Kardec Radio only one this far, which is Drops of Light. But he has a most preferred one, especially if we love nature and learning with nature. It's named, in Portuguese, Cartilha da Natureza. How do you call it in English, Cartilha? How is it, Carlos?
No, cartilha is like a notebook, like a textbook.
Like textbook,
Like a
right?
textbook.
Yeah,
Oh,
for
a
children, right? It's like textbook.
A nature reference book.
Yeah. But it's so beautiful because each chapter, thank you, each chapter, it's like, for example, the ocean. So he talks about the ocean. It's very simple, but so poetic. And at the end, he talks about us and learning from the ocean how it happens to us. I mean, it's a book that I used to have on my dinner table many years ago. I gave it to a friend, and Mentor Joseph said, this will be the tone for the world of regeneration. So if we want to feel it, that book by Casimiro Cunha is like pointing to this new world that is opening up to us. And this is just a glimpse of it. It's his letter of the new year, or to the new year. In Portuguese, it's named Ano, Carta ao Ano Bom. I'm just saying it because there are different ways of phrasing it out. This is the way we kept it. So I'm going to begin. So we have to pay attention to see what's next, okay? New Year's letter. Yes. Thank you, Dixie. Okay, so we're gonna begin and you continue, okay? New Year's letter between a year that goes.
And a new one that begins.
There is always a new hope.
Promises of a new day.
That the year that passed
was of dark bitterness.
Our Father was never low.
On the bread of joy's light.
Be in the workshop of the world.
The most perfect apprentice.
For only in work
Will your year be happy?
Those who truly make an act.
Carlos. No. Those.
No.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
know how to
'Cause you're-
practice the good. Know how to practice the good.
Know their own duties.
Without criticizing anyone.
New year, ask that the heavens
Protect your work.
Provide you with faith.
the most sublime coat.
Good year.
God bless you in the effort.
Carlos.
That leads you from the sadness, shadow of the earth.
Through the blessings of Jesus.
You know, you could tell by the first paragraph that rhymed a little bit how it feels, right? And we have a lot to extract. What is interesting, we want to point out, we can bring our own highlights. It's good that each one of us shares their highlights and the inspiration that we receive. But Casimiro Cunha and many of the spirit poets that wrote through Chico Xavier when he was quite young, he was 17, 19 years of age, from a very small town in Brazil at a time in which, like a century ago, if this city is small nowadays, imagine a century ago in Brazil. So there was no internet and TV, etc. So you can almost imagine all of these great intellectual minds who didn't believe any of it. And then in the afterlife, they came back and they say, oh, now I want to help. Now I want to say a word. So they come back and now they use art for the inner therapy in us, which is the foundation of the new world, the regeneration of the world in the decades to come, when we're going to use art not to numb the senses, but to,
Emphasis to bring them out.
Yeah.
Blossom.
yeah, the harmony, right? So I was sharing with Daisy yesterday that, you know, Mentor Joseph keeps saying few things that will happen one day. We're like, how can we start doing this now? Like in the center, he said, you know, there will be a course to learn how to write the good. And there will be a course when you're going to learn how to write the good through poetry. It's like, oh, can we do this course already here in the center? Practice it. But that's, he said, one day we'll be able to do it. But can you imagine when we are able to sit together and learn how to write? Not only to write, because that's what we do when we go to school, but to write anything is easy. But to write wisely and bringing health and harmony to make somebody smile and feel hope, empower, it's another skill. And that's what he knows already, right? So let us open up and tell what caught your attention. I mean, your highlight, your thoughts.
I like that he's talking about work in his couple of paragraphs here, couple of verses. He's talking about, you know, you'll be happy if you work. So for only work will your year be happy. And then he talks about make an effort, will truly make an effort, you know, how to practice the good. And then he's saying, protect your work. It's the most sublime coat. So like he's bringing to us one that if the year that passed felt heavy, and it's okay, because it's work and it sublimates us. And look into the new year, it's not for us to shy away from it, but take it as the work of the good and work from God. He just talks about it multiple times.
And it's interesting, Paloma, when you're saying work, because he's using the Spiritist definition. And what is work? It's not the job where you're paid. That's not what he means. The work here means to be useful. So to be useful, it doesn't matter if you are retired or not. It's like, be useful. Even if you are in a nursing home. I mean, you can be useful even when you're sick.
It takes in a very, very wide spectrum. As you all say, useful. I love that term. Here it's useful, but you emphasize the vowels, and maybe that's better because to be useful encompasses so much. Just a simple smile to somebody that passes by, or the hi, or the hello. My favorite, of course, is picking up a piece of trash, but you know, it's fun. It spans so many. There's so many opportunities that you have each day that many of us, you know, we don't pay attention to it, and I think that's one of the most important things is to bring that awareness to everybody you meet and everything you meet, every piece of nature that you come in contact with. I mean, it's just one thing after the other. But going back to what Paloma was saying, all this good without criticizing anyone, and that's, I think, one of the more difficult things that we have in life is not to criticize people or judge them, which we all have a tendency to do, unfortunately. But again, taking the high road, which is to see the good that they have in them, because we all have that goodness in us. A slice of us is good, a slice of us is not so good.
It's nice to see it on paper, but I was thinking about how good I felt today on the way over. And I almost put my finger on it on the way as I was sending some Happy New Year messages to people that I hadn't, don't communicate with as often as I'd like to. And just that with the new year, it really enables you to kind of have not a fresh start, but to turn the page on some things that you know you could do better. So everybody makes New Year's resolutions, and everybody's always so hopeful and ambitious in those resolutions, right? They're gonna eat healthy. They're gonna work out, they're going to be kinder to their family and others, and we don't always accomplish all of those, or sometimes any of those, but every year on the 1st of January, there's that hope and that intention that we're gonna do those things, and that I think, is worth it right there, and we get a new chance to do it each year.
It's interesting that you said that, Todd, because on the way over on the radio, there was a female announcer, and she talked about this is the time of year, just like you're saying, that we make these particular resolutions. And one of the ones she said was like, stop drinking alcohol, and she said you stop drinking alcohol for a month and then you go right back again to doing it. So it's that whole idea of you make the resolution, but how far do you carry it through during the year?
Yeah. thanks to science, we have increasing evidence that we better stop drinking alcohol. If you mentioned that, I'm just saying, because yesterday I read a paper on at Harvard, and they were talking about the 75% increase of, it exposes you much more to dementia in older, in the aging years if you drink alcohol. Of course, I mean, it doesn't do any good. And we're just saying this because he mentioned, but we talk to children every day, already explaining about it and saying, what's the purpose? But it's just like anything else when you talk about eating healthy. You may not drink alcohol, but then we eat a box of chocolate.
I was just gonna say, that's
And that's
another
a
favorite
problem.
one is
Mm.
stop eating a lot of sugar.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we still do eat too much sugar because
In
it's
everything.
Probably the biggest addiction that we have.
Yeah, it's in everything, right? They
Yes.
put more and
Purposely.
more, yeah. So for us, I mean, there's a lot. You want to get it? Yeah. Don't be shy, and that's the best way.
The whole message is so beautiful, but I think along the lines, as Todd was saying, I think the very first
Let's say paragraph.
paragraph.
Stands up paragraph.
Yeah.
Because it says, as the year goes and a new one begins, there is always a new hope, promises of a new day. And I think it's beautiful, as we're saying, that the new year give us that that way to think, okay, there's a new day ahead. But for some reason, I feel like this can apply every day too, like definitely for the new year for sure. But if you, as you go through, if there's hardships or things that come your way, there's always hope. And I think the whole message is so hopeful. But Lincoln saying we do have to make an effort, and then he ends saying, God bless you in the effort that leads you from the sadness shadows of the earth to the blessings of Jesus. So he's not saying it's gonna be easy, right? This is saying you need that effort, but there is always hope, and that's the way to the blessings of Jesus. So I think to add, because everything else was already said about work. I think that really hopeful. The way he starts very hopeful and ends also very hopeful at the end.
No, I don't. That's a good point, because it's like effort again. Work, effort, and we can't forget what André Louis says always, right? We're learning beings. We can learn anything we want if we put our minds onto it. And then it's interesting because he says we learn and progress through effort and repetition. I mean, if we know it, our lives are going to be so much simpler, because there's nothing we cannot do, because it's just a matter of applying ourselves to it. Completely different from the materialistic point of view that says you can't do it because you're not born for it, because your genes, it's not in your genes. Or of course you're going to be sick because it's in your genes. Look at your whole family. And then Spiritism says not necessarily. Maybe your whole family can be diabetic, and maybe you're the only one who will not, because it's not in your reincarnatory plan. And thanks to epigenetics, we would vouch for that theory, saying you're right. I mean, depending on what you do, you're not going to trigger those genes. So more and more evidence is bringing to us that we are co-creating our destiny as we speak. And I love when you say it's about each and every day, right? Because as Todd said, it's like, oh my gosh, a whole year, and then halfway through the year, you're back into the old conditionings, and you're like, oh, see, I'm never gonna change. Nothing's gonna change. Life has always been like this, and that's when desperation comes, and that's a problem. Interesting enough, when we talk about desperation, two things come up that I recall from the Spiritist literature. A message that I read from Emmanuel recently, it's like a month ago or 2 months ago maybe, and I was so impressed because he talks about selfishness in many ways in life. And he says, when we are selfish in sadness, it's manifested in the form of despair. So he shows to us that behind these weaker feelings, whatever we want to name it, I don't like to say weak, but these feelings, there is this selfishness, which is this egocentrism. If life doesn't bring into me, then life is bad. I'm not going to keep living. I mean, it's so selfish, because look at people around you. There are people living worse than you or better than you, and you can't even be compassionate towards them or happy for those. So it's all about you. So that's why we enter the despair, because it's not bringing to me. It's the adult tantrum, right? Despair. So why despair? And then in the Gospel according to Spiritism, it says, chapter 5, which is Blessed are the afflicted, the antidote to despair is calmness. And we can't refrain from bringing about Mother Mary's mantra when she says, everything shall pass. Everything shall pass. And it passes. Everything passes. So that's how we keep ourselves like, oh my gosh, and then it's okay, this shall pass, and then I renew myself daily. It's a day-to-day thing. Right? And interesting, that pair, despair, it's like in sadness, selfishness presents itself as despair. And he says in joy as well. It's interesting because sometimes we are in the other extreme. Completely extreme. Like if we're not sad, we're extremely joyful. And he says, when selfishness is present in joy, we enter, or it's manifested as excess. And we see in social media every day, you know, and people are there showing off this extreme joy, but so selfish, forgetting that there are many people who right now may be working, and you're taking a picture of you in a gorgeous scenario, like in a restaurant. I'm just saying, whatever it is,
Exactly what happened.
right?
It's like Facebook.
Yeah, Facebook.
It's terrible.
It's terrible. It makes people feel terrible.
It's
And
not real.
but then when it's you, it's wonderful. But when it's somebody else, and it's an illusion.
It's really bad for young girls because they see what they're supposed to be and they're not.
Yeah, you're right. Instagram now for them, it's even worse because it's all about images,
Yeah.
right? It's like one image, or a short clip, and then people are measuring themselves against that and like, oh my gosh, I'm not good enough. I'm not that good. I'm not that good. I mean, shut it down. I wouldn't watch it. We use it because of the Spiritist.
They thrive on it. I don't understand it. They can't put their phones, they have to see what somebody else is doing. It's,
Yeah.
It's bizarre.
It's bizarre. It's sick in a way.
should be a timeout every day, a certain amount of time during the day where the phone is put away or disregarded.
We do that unintentionally.
Some
We
of-
always
some
lose
of
our
us do,
phones.
yes.
Our phones and our glasses. All day long, where's my phone, where's my glasses?
You're blessed.
And
When
I,
I-
no, I'm not, because my friends will say,
Oh, I know.
Didn't you see the text I sent you? And I'm like, well, I'm here, what do you want?
Yeah.
But they're mad because we didn't see their text, so I'm like, I'm sorry.
Some
Don't
of 'em-
feel bad.
Some of them will text me or call me because she is,
Easy or
she's not
text.
centered on the phone.
It's like, what is so important that
Mm.
I need to know
Yeah.
now?
Right, I agree. And it's interesting because when I was a teen preparing to enter college in Brazil, we have to do like a special exam. It's like a 3-day exam, crazy.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's
What is
crazy.
that?
It's a crazy exam when you have to enter college in
For
Brazil.
what?
To enter college,
Why?
to, because if you don't pass, you can't go to college where you want to go.
Why?
I'll explain you more at home, okay?
Why?
But that's a good question. I'll explain
Very
more.
good question.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Why? But that's for later, for 2020. But what is interesting is that Mentor Joseph, I was 17 almost, yeah, 16, 17, preparing. And I have very many friends. We didn't have social media back then. But I remember when he said, because people used to finish the exam that day and go talk to the friends and see how you did. And I had a brother who was also going through the same exam. We're under the same roof, and he had so many friends too. Mentor Joseph said, don't talk to anybody. Just keep your cool, go to the swimming pool, prepare for next day, and just be yourself with yourself. And should I talk to my brother? No, leave him alone. He would talk to her. And my friends would call and say, Mom, I'm not home until this is done. And thank God it worked. Because I finished, I passed, I entered where I wanted. And so what is interesting is that I didn't go crazy. When I finished with ease. But people would be crazy because they would talk and say, oh my gosh, I forgot about it. I'm not going to enter. And then the next day,
They're all rebels.
yeah. I mean, so what's the point? So it's where we're saying to Virginia yesterday, I said, the two big things in adulthood is freedom management and self-control. Because we're home and we could lay down the couch, do nothing, or clean, prepare for the new year. It's up to you. Nobody's gonna tell you do it or don't do it, unless you're a kid and then your mom will tell you or dad. But then if you're an adult, nobody will. And then it's up to you. But if you choose the good part of it all, it pays off. So freedom management. Some people, they trash their lives just because they are like excessive in their freedom. They have no limits. They're like, now I'm gonna do whatever you want. Remember, for every action, there's a reaction.
You brought this subject up about school. And we listened to a TED Talk yesterday. And it was on NPR, and they have an hour or half an hour, I don't know how much it is, on TED Talks. And they had this gentleman, Sir Kenneth, I think it is, Kenneth Robinson. And he's done a lot of schoolwork over in England.
He's excellent.
Really?
He's got such a good sense of humor.
Oh, really?
Really good.
And that TED Talk is about the
It's supposed to be one of the most popular TED Talks. And he talks about how important it is to have the arts in education. which is what we're bringing up now
Yeah.
in Spiritism, how important music and drawing and poetry is so important.
For his creativity.
But, yeah.
And how school kills creativity.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the schools are, as he said, formulated for the work, and the companies influence what gets put at the hierarchy, which is the science and the technology. And of course, we understand through the Spiritist studies that in the afterlife, what's important up there is music. Music is one of the most important things in the afterlife, and the art, I would imagine, too.
Yeah.
Same way.
Yeah.
And this is what gives you the creativity when you go back and you think about how you feel when you feel the vibrations of music, or you feel good like when you all read the poetry in Portuguese, how it just flows and vibrates.
About the girl who was in
That's
That
you
was
want to
really
tell that
good.
story?
Yeah, there was a young girl, there was a young girl, and she was, before they had the ADD, she was, just couldn't sit still. And she was always getting in trouble in school, and so the mother took her to this psychologist or whatever, and they were there and they were talking, and the girl, they put her, they said, go outside and wait, we're gonna talk. And the psychologist said to the mother and father, look what she's doing. She gets up, she's walking around, you need to teach her, you need to take her to dance. She needs to dance.
Oh, wow.
So instead of putting on drugs or whatever, she was channeled into dance, and later became this really extraordinary choreographer. She worked with Andrew Lloyd Wright. She wrote Cats.
Oh.
And
Yeah, Cats and one other famous
Phantom of the Opera.
Oh, wow.
And she was extremely successful because
But what,
instead of, trying to make this square block fit into a round hole, they, nurtured the thing that the child was good at.
yeah, before the mother and the psychologist walked out of the room, he turned the radio on.
That's right.
And then they left the room, and then he says, now watch. And as soon as the music went on, the girl got up and started dancing. And, if ADHD was there, they would have, the guy's so funny, he says, ADHD hadn't been invented yet,
Discovered yet.
so
You
they.
you couldn't have that disease.
But the psychologist was so observant and knew what was going on. And this is what happens with so many of the kids nowadays.
There was another one, the mother with the son. I can't remember what.
I know, but I can't remember what that
And
one
she was
associated
really
with.
intuitive too, and she took him and channeled him in that way. And it was just really good. And I think as parents, you have to really know what your kids are good at and give them the opportunity.
But
Yeah,
it's
something,
interesting, we're so on the same page because 2 nights ago, somewhere in the middle of the night, I was like watching this Netflix. Joseph said, watch this, it's like ballet, dancer. And then there is this mom. She has 2 kids. One is a 17-year-old girl. She's a good ballet dancer. And the father, they are divorcing, so the father left home. And the children are distraught. The mom doesn't know what to do with her life. And the mom is not paying attention at all to the kids. And she doesn't go to her 17-year-old classes, the recitals, nothing. And she's about to audition for a San Francisco ballet group. She is really, 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 really good. The mom doesn't care. She says, you're not gonna go. Period. I want you to go to college. Forget about this nonsense of dancing. And she's so brutal that she actually goes to the ballet school and she's really like shouting and telling her to go home, and it's crazy. And then of course this girl calls the father, and the father says no because he's so selfish, he doesn't care about anything. And then she says, well, I have a best friend, I'm gonna ask him to take me to San Francisco, I'm gonna audition anyway. She does. She enters. And it was the time that was needed for the mom to go talk to her teacher and realize, he says, look at her clip, the audition clip. You haven't seen her dancing at all. And then showed it to her. And she was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know she was this good. She was a stay-at-home mom. And in spite of it, she was not paying attention. She was not communicating with her children either. She was just like, because that's the problem with many parents. They don't talk to their kids. They don't listen. They don't observe. And then the problems happen. And then when we grow adults, we just repeat the same mistake. Not only with the new generation, but with the child inside of us. The child inside of us, we need to talk to that child and say, what are you doing? What's happening to you? What do you want to do now? And then we need to manage those feelings. We can't repress. It's not successful, because then when we repress, we will have to channel it into the legal ways of the adult world. It's like sex and alcohol and drugs, because my child is screaming, you don't allow me to do anything I want. And then I go there and I go back to bad eating habits, to bad conditionings of all sorts, because we're not managing that inner child inside of us too either.
People are prepared for child.
Right.
I don't think there's any preparation. And then you go home with this child and you don't know what to do with it.
You're right. You're right. You're right. We don't know what to do. And just a second, Vivi. If the year that passed, it's interesting because we're talking about this other side of life, was a dark bitterness. Our Father was never low on the bread of joy's light. I mean, this is so beautiful. It's God's providence to show to us. God knows exactly what's happening to us. We're not abandoned. We just need to understand God's way of educating us. Like a parent, when you love a child, you say, let's make an effort and finish this homework. Let's do this. It's important for us to practice this self-control, this inner administration of ourselves. And for some of them, like, oh, you don't love me. That's why you want me to do these chores. No, because I love you. I want you to do these chores because when you grow older, it's going to be second nature for you. Instead of like many people who say, oh, I'm adulting, I don't know how to cook. I don't know how to clean. I don't know how to manage my finances. Basic things, because nobody taught us.
They took, they used to call it home economics.
Yeah.
Teach you to cook and take care of you.
I know how to cook.
Sort of
Cesar,
something you really
yeah.
should come out of high school with.
Scrambled eggs.
Scrambled eggs, Virginia. That's a step,
That's
huh?
all I know how to cook.
Yeah. You know other stuff as
That's a
well.
good start.
Pasta. Pasta.
Mm-mm, I
Water
don't
into
know.
the pasta.
That's easy.
But it's dangerous. I mean, when you're 6, easy with the boiling water. Right, Isabella?
Boiling.
Boring water? No.
No.
Boiling water. So it brings God into the picture for us. And it's okay to go through tests. A teacher is never tricking us. I remember my students saying, Dr. Anseloni, are you gonna trick us on exam day? I said, look at my face. Am I of that nature? Am I the type of teacher? A good teacher never tricks the students. If they do, they're not good teachers. Right? So you're not tricking. God is not tricking us. And we see, for example, let me talk about Chico Xavier, the medium. Can you sit over here, please? The medium. Wonderful medium brought us this message. He went through financial difficulties. His mother died when he was almost 5. And he spent some years with his godmother who was very mean to him. And you're like, are you kidding me? And he was a missionary spirit on earth. So what is God's plan? I mean, in a linear way, hard to decode. But then go deeper. For us, look at Daddy, he's looking at you. So for us, nowadays, when we go through difficulties, for example, looking at Jesus may be a far stretch for many of us. For some of us who know Spiritism and know of Chico Xavier, we go back and look at his life. We're like, whoa. If it happened to Chico, what's happening to me is nothing. Nothing. So come on, cheer up and go. So you see, what is God doing? Also, he volunteered to model for us in many ways how to go through things. And Jesus is the top of it all. If you think of Jesus and what he did in 3 years in public and changes the world every day, it's still changing everything. Why did he go through the most cruel homicide of all times, especially because he was not guilty at all? And even if he were, it's cruel to do what they did to him. He said, if you follow these steps, it's going to happen to you. We may not be crucified physically, but in our day-to-day life, when we do choices that are Christ conscious, people may look at us thinking we're weird, to say the least. At work, like, what? You are not going to partake in the gossiping meal? And then people want to avenge you because you're better than others? Is that what you think? You're better than others? You're not going to happy hour? Why, you think you're better than us? Oh, you don't drink alcohol? Why, you think you're better than us? And people, you don't say anything, but people start observing, and some of them really retaliate in their own way. So that's what we're talking about. And in family, we don't need to talk about that because it's so obvious. But in families, of course, that's the first thing that happens. Right? So it's part of life. And if we think, what's the goal? A materialistic view cannot understand why. I agree. If somebody says, I don't believe in anything, why do I have to suffer? You're right, you don't. You don't. Like I saw the story in the New York Times. It's sad to say, but it's important to share facts because Kardec shared the facts. This couple in New York, they get to know of each other at junior college, and then they get married. They love each other, have children, now grandchildren. They are living in New York. It was in the New York Times yesterday. And then when she's 70-something, she starts presenting some Alzheimer's signs. But he says, I'm going to take care of her. So he tells his daughter, saying, don't worry, I'm going to take care of her. And the daughter said, we can have somebody at home to help you guys. No, I'm going to give her medication. I'll take care of her. And at some point, she doesn't recognize him anymore. And he's distraught. He doesn't tell everybody the full extent of what he knows, even about his health. And I'm sorry to say in front of kids, but we're old enough to know the facts of life. He simply decides to quit life and to put an end to her life too. And that's when we say no to guns. They don't even know where he got the gun. He puts an end. He puts her to sleep, and then ends her life, and then he does it with himself. The sad part, not only that, is that 2 weeks later, one of his grandchildren is getting married, and they knew it. And he knew it. He writes a letter to her saying that he's sorry, but wishing her a good life. And they go on with the marriage, with the celebrations. And when the reporters get the opinions of the daughters, they say, yeah, we understand him. It must have been very painful and lonely for him. We're not going to judge because we have to pray, especially tonight. We cannot criticize or judge. But when we think that this is it, it makes perfect sense that you don't have to bear the pain. But the question is, you didn't create yourself. You're not self-created. I mean, how can you end your life if you didn't create your life? I mean, that's where reasoning comes to place. Like, whether you call it God, source, light, intelligence, whatever it is, you're not self-made. So how can you end your life just like that without thinking, contemplating, like, what do you want from me? What do we do at this time undergoing this phase of our lives? But if you go through a whole life in pure materialism, I mean, there is no point on managing pain. Just end with it. But for us, that's not an option. Because we know there is no end.
We know the consequences.
And there are consequences even to that.
That's what too many of us don't know. And you just have to pity the people that take their lives without understanding what's on the other side. What
You
they'll have
can't
to-
judge them.
No, it's
You
not
can't, because you don't know how their whole lives were, and
No.
and he was diagnosed with a tumor in his liver and other things. So probably he was really desperate, and he didn't want to be,
Burden.
a burden to his
He may
family.
not have known what if he passed, who was going to care for his wife. I mean, that could have been his biggest fear.
Yeah.
Was so there's like you're saying, you pity them, but you also can't even put ourselves in their shoes.
No.
It's just impossible.
No, just pray for 'em.
But that's why we need to talk about this, because when we are going through this, we're not punished if we get sick. In 2,000 years ago in ancient Rome, when we believed in many gods, that's how we thought. You're sick, you're poor, you're of low socioeconomic class, you are punished by the gods. We still have that feeling inside of us. If I have a new car, oh, God thinks it's like children. You got a gift and you're a great child. Not necessarily.
You are blessed.
You may be spoiled. Because maybe you don't deserve anything. I'm not want to be harsh, but it doesn't mean anything. It just means the circumstances want you to be tested on it. So you grow in virtues.
There's always the cause and effect. There's always a reason behind things that happen. Today, I was debating whether I'd be able to be here tonight because my sister's flying in from Seattle. And it just so happened that she got delayed twice. And she's not arriving to the airport until like 7:53 we found her.
Here, IAD.
Dawes.
what a blessing.
She doesn't think so. I said, somebody's looking out for me.
But you be there so joyful, you give extra hugs.
But,
Yeah.
I thought it was very, very, very interesting.
Wow.
So,
Impressive. The gods like you.
today.
You're powerful. Huh? No, but we're saying we have been thinking about this for so many lives.
Need a pen?
Thank you, Virgin. Tricky mommy.
Oh, you're so tricky.
Can give her the,
Oh, you're really special.
Can you believe it?
Alfred has this little
Ay,
pen
ay,
that
ay.
shocks you. He likes to give it out to you.
Oh
baby
my
shots.
Lord.
Doesn't shout, it's just-
So
Just
you're
give it-
invited to put it back, okay? Since you
Penny's
know
always
better
like
than
keeping
me.
a pen.
Go here, go
Yeah. So the beauty of it all is that we're being asked in this new year to protect our work, and I think this is one of the most intriguing parts of this message. If we can pick one intriguing one, is this one. Protect, ask that the heavens protect your work. Provide you with faith, the most sublime quote. I mean, here they give us tools for the new year, meaning protect us in the way of being useful. Because what happens if we're not? We're useless, and in this world there's only two frequencies, like the constructive and destructive. If I say like some people, oh, who am I? Nobody cares. And then you decide to be useless, who is gonna be with us? Our children know the answer. Hawkmoth, the miraculous, the baddies, right? And they exist in the spiritual realm. We're not kidding, we see it every day. So that they provide us with the faith as our coat. And so for us, I mean, we received today like this blanket, or the blankie, security blanket, to hold on to and say, you know, it makes sense to know that God exists. I don't think it's a belief, it's just a knowledge. Because reasoning points to the direction that there is a force greater than us that creates us for beautiful things. When you observe nature, you're mesmerized with the perfection of everything and the power. You're like, wow, it must be for a good reason that I'm living. Thus, we keep investing on it. That's our faith and our protection as well. To say, oh God, in this 2020, may we co-create with you in greater ways inside of us. Never doubting our importance, never comparing ourselves with anybody. Never comparing. And I say this because our children are here too. It's important for us to tell this to our children and show it to them. Since a child, Mentor Joseph always said, don't compare yourselves to yourself to other kids. Everybody's important. And if one is shining more than you, it doesn't mean you're less. Just mean that that's their time. Your time will come, like flowers, like trees. There's a mango tree and an apple tree. And the apple cannot stop blooming and fruitifying because it's not a mango tree. So it's just different. It's not less. We can't doubt ourselves. And Louise Hay identified that this is the number one thing that gets us sick, when we don't love and approve of ourselves. And God, no matter what He does, He puts in our hands the power to do it for ourselves. Like, we need to approve ourselves and love ourselves, because God does. The world may do it, but if we don't, and there's no comparison. Everybody is important. everyone. And we have different tasks, but we shall co-create.
I think that's lost on so many people, that each one of us has a particular task to do. The humblest, from cleaning the streets to the, the CEO of Bill Gates, or what's his name, Amazon.
Yeah, Bezos.
It's
Jeff
just,
Bezos.
take and appreciating what everybody does is really, really, it's just so joyful to see people doing these mundane tasks, but yet you being grateful that somebody's collecting your trash every week,
Yeah.
or somebody's coming around and cleaning the street, or vacuum up the leaves that you raked out in the yard. There's so many of these mundane things that we look at, and we're there for this.
Thank you, John. Virginia wants to show, just so we don't forget, mango tree, apple. Doesn't matter. Oh, beautiful mangoes. And what is the apple tree gonna do? Say, oh, who am I? I'm not a mango tree. I'm an apple tree, super apple tree. Apple juice, anyone? Right? That's our goal for 2020. Let it shine. Let the light of God in us shine, because we are leading to the blessings, being led to the blessings of Jesus, right? Right? So we are going to ask John to kindly read the whole poem for us, so we wrap it up and say a prayer. Okay? We're gonna keep it here. What is that? Yeah, the microphone. Let's keep it here as a
Try to
reminder.
write.
There is always a new hope, promises of a new day. If the year that passed was of dark bitterness, our Father was never low on the bread of joy's light. Be in the workshop of the world the most perfect apprentice, for only in work will your year be happy. Those who truly make an effort know how to practice the good, know their own duties without criticizing anyone. New Year, ask that the heavens protect your work, provide you with faith, the most sublime coat. Good year, God bless you in the effort that leads you from the saddened shadows of the earth to the blessings of Jesus.
So we're gonna close this meeting now with our final prayer. So let's close our eyes and take a deep breath in whenever we are. And let's feel the blessings of this day. To be reincarnated is a blessing. Everything we're going through, we know there is a reason. So let's connect now with the source of love in our lives. Dear Mother, Father God, we feel truly blessed this evening to be able to be united with one another, renewing our hopes. We know, Father, today is just a symbolic date because we can renew ourselves every day. But in this symbolic date that has such deep meaning for our planet, we rejoice to be a part of this world of regeneration, awaken to the blessings of life. And we kindly ask you, Father, knowing that we are already given so much, that in the new year that begins, we can really renew ourselves, letting go of past tendencies that we have hold on for so many years, so many reincarnations, and open ourselves to a new beginning with joy, with courage, and with love to you. We also kindly ask, Father, that we share the blessings of this evening with those across our planet Earth that at this very moment may feel they might feel lost and alone in both realms of life, that they can have the strength to not give up, not today and not never. Bless those, especially this evening, Father, who are thinking or have in the past taken their lives, that the showers of Mother Mary bless them and guide their pathways. With much gratitude in our hearts and feeling the showers of this evening, we ask your permission to close this prayerful moment of tonight, sharing these blessings with those across our planet, and so be it.